Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia and coming to you live. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I'm the news editor for the Cradle, and as usual, I'm joined by my friends and colleagues, content creator and writer for the Cradle, Karim Shami, and columnist and editor for the Cradle, Sharmeen Narwani. As usual, before we start, just a friendly reminder, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, make sure to check out the memberships here on our YouTube channel, but above everything else, check out our Patreon, where you can become a direct supporter of the Cradle. Please support independent journalism. Also, check out our merch store. We have very, very cool stuff available for purchase also to support the Cradle. So, having said all that, a couple of interesting events this week that kind of, I feel like, they are aligned with each other in some way. Let's start with the first one, the attack on U.S. troops in Syria, in the city of Palmyra, in which 3 U.S. service members, I believe including an interpreter, were killed in this attack by a person who, it was revealed just hours later, was a member of the security forces, of Syria's security forces. He opens fire in what was presented as initially, and I have seen it still in some outlets, being presented as an ISIS attack. Even U.S. officials reacted to it, alleging this was an attack by ISIS. And here we go back to that old question that first popped up a year ago after the fall of the Assad government in Syria. And it is, who are actually the members of Syria's new security forces? Who are actually the members who conducted the massacres in Alawite regions of coastal Syria or in Druze regions, and who at one point were even trying to get into the Kurds regions? Yes, they were also members of ISIS. So here, you kind of chickens coming home to roost, really. What happened? You have 3 U.S. service members killed in an alleged anti-ISIS operation with the security forces, which again, just kind of like the same thing, right? I think we were joking about this. I don't know if you, Karim, you got the image. We were joking about this earlier, that we will show you some exclusive images of this confrontation. Here you go. This is essentially what happened on Friday, according to some reports, according to U.S. officials. Nevertheless, as the title says, as the thumbnail of this video says, ISIS is back. Oh, really? Who could have expected this? So having said all that, what do you guys make of what happened in Syria?
I think our thumbnail today says ISIS is back, and then ask the question, oh, really? I think by now, the majority of people because U.S. officials have said that the U.S. has supported ISIS. Trump has accused Obama of doing that. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange released cables saying that the U.S. was in bed with ISIS. The U.S.'s own Defense Intelligence Agency had a report out in 2012 showing that the U.S. backed what was essentially Al-Qaeda in Syria. So, I mean, this goes back to, as we often say, the Mujahideen, the funding, the U.S.-Saudi funding and arming and logistical supply of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan.
Sharmeen, can you get a bit closer to your microphone, because it's starting to get echoey?
Yeah. Does that help?
A bit, but I think maybe Karim is again picking up your sound. Nevertheless, continue with your idea.
Karim, you're going to have to, because that echo that I heard last time, we're using new stuff since last week, but I had an echo. Is that better?
Much better,
okay.
much better.
Okay, so essentially, these groups were identified, individuals, people with extremist ideologies or who were willing to pick up arms and fight dirty wars were, entirely put together by by U.S. intelligence and the Saudis, back during the 80s. And then they've morphed into various organizations, offshoots of each other's, franchises of each other's. And the worst of them we're calling Al-Qaeda and ISIS. But, when the head of Al-Qaeda, right, in Syria is welcomed at the White House just, a month ago, right?
Oh, yeah,
with
weeks.
Great
Just
fanfare.
weeks,
yeah, with great fanfare. It's, it's come full circle. everybody now understands who the US was supporting. In a way, Al-Qaeda was really, what's it called? Whitewashed. There were great attempts by Western politicians, Western media to whitewash Al-Qaeda during the Syrian war. And then the creation of ISIS as the new, extremist, Islamist extremist ideology and organization. But we saw in the Syrian war that there was real fluidity between these groups, from the Free Syrian Army all the way to ISIS and back, via Al-Qaeda. And so essentially what we come to today is, the West dropping all its veils because they're in dire straits economically. They're, hemorrhaging hegemony all in all theaters. And so they're showing their face. And it is that they have supported Al-Qaeda in all these theaters. ISIS is their only bogeyman left. But as I've mentioned, even Trump has acknowledged, others have acknowledged that ISIS is a creation of the same groups, the same bandits, the Americans and the Saudis and whatnot. I do want to reference something. Well, no, let me first get to the shootings. So I want to read from a note by Saleh al-Hamawi. He's a former leader of Jabhat al-Nusra, which is basically the Al-Qaeda franchise in Syria, and one of its founders. And he wrote, quote, "I am certain that al-Shara," that's Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, or Ahmad al-Shara, the new acting president of Syria. "I am certain that al-Shara is now pulling his hair out over the stupidity of his quote-unquote great team that he used to praise. Mu'taz al-Nasser, who used to attack the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is another...
The government of Syria, essentially.
Yeah. And was later bought off with money, at one point said the perpetrator was ISIS. Then the idiot went on to admit that he was a security operative who held extremist ideas. Worse still, he said, quote, "We discovered him on December 10th and we were going to dismiss him, but we didn't make it in time because it was a holiday." Okay, now Trump has said it was an ISIS attack, and other US officials have said it was an ISIS attack. I think Secretary for Hegseth included. While the Syrian authorities initially claimed it was a member of the Badia security who held extremist ideas, US Central Command has also called it an ISIS ambush, meaning the attack came from outside the location. But the truth, according to Nur al-Din al-Baba's own words, and Nur al-Din al-Baba is Mu'taz al-Nasser, who, Ahmad al-Shara holds near and dear, is that the attack came from inside the location. And you can't cover up these details anymore. We're seeing all of the sort of lies and constructs that the US government, others and their allies are putting out, just falling apart. They seem to be playing with by an old playbook, and they're missing and it's very naive, because we've seen far too much to believe these playbooks anymore, and these same storylines over and over again. Terror attack, and it's a Muslim terrorist, and a passport is found on the scene. That's one of the things that people now laugh at openly and immediately suspect that their own governments were involved, right? But he goes on to say, this is the former founder of Nusra in Syria, the attack was far more complex than that, okay, not just coming from inside the location. He says the attack was not fully carried out as they intended. All of them were members of Badia security and had previously belonged to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham before its so-called liberation. Indeed, he says, an order was issued by the Information Office of the Intelligence Service to dismiss this individual, but the Minister of Interior did not carry it out because, the holidays came or whatever.
It was a holiday. Karim, I sent you the link on the report. I don't know if you can put it on screen while Sharmina continues.
And he goes on to say that, these people have sent the authorities in Damascus detailed reports about, like, for instance, the coastal attack, which happened on March 6th. They sent it to them 4 days ago, but it was ignored by Damascus. And he says, Trump and Thomas Barak want to patch things up for al-Shara, okay, the handsome Ahmed al-Shara, and help it. And they know all the details. He says that Trump and Thomas Barak and the U.S. officials on the Syrian file know all about this and know all these details. Essentially, they're lying to their own public. And he says, for the record, the attempted assassination of al-Shara in the presidential palace in Damascus was also carried out by a member of the palace guard who held extremist ideas. Basically, everyone in power in Syria is there because of their extremist ideas or willingness to take cash in exchange for services. So you have the least sovereign government. You have a government infested with absolute crazies who have, slowly and meticulously and, enjoyed slicing people's necks. This is the kind of person, running Syria, who the Americans are praising effusively. And then, American servicemen get killed in Syria.
I mean, the real question here is what many have been asking in the comments as well. What are they doing in Syria? And from what I've seen, and I'm trying to verify this, but they were National Guard troops. What is the National Guard, the U.S. National Guard, doing in Syria? And yet, another thing I want to point out very quickly, it's the attack. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think it came the day after the House of Representatives voted to lift the Caesar Act sanctions. So
yeah, it's all a joke. I do want to point something out that Hamawi goes on to say that the Syrian security forces today are infiltrated by ISIS elements, and he believes that number is around 15% of the Syrian security forces. But he says the current Syrian army is infiltrated at a rate that may reach 30%. Now, don't forget the al-Shara and HTS dismissed basically the entire professional Syrian army and brought on their thugs and a bunch of people who, had been running terror attacks for over a decade. And he says that al-Shara wants to purge these elements, but he's almost powerless because of his insistence that appointments of security personnel and senior personnel and senior military officials and generals, etc., are made based on loyalty. He has no qualified cadres at all, he says. And he says, I swear I was shocked when I learned that the head of criminal security investigations for all of Syria was a former Hayat member who worked as a blacksmith in a workshop affiliated with the Hamas sector and doesn't even hold a 9th grade certificate. And this is someone that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham itself had imprisoned years ago on charges of financial corruption. Basically, Damascus is a shit show. The Syrian administration is a shit show. They don't have people, educated technocrats leading things. They have a bunch of head chopping thugs. And so, of course, American security officials will be in harm's way when everyone is. By the way, Karim, since the killing of the American soldiers and other Syrian personnel, there have been 2 more attacks on Syrian security forces, very likely from their own cadres during the war. So the story continues, really.
I mean, it happened overnight in what was it? Near Idlib, in the countryside of Idlib, I believe. Yeah. Karim, give us your thoughts about this confrontation and the untimely death of these 3 U.S. service members.
First, I think Syria now needs, or the new Syria needs the United States, because currently they are unable to protect their own regime. They need external forces. There is Turkey in the north, and in the south they ask the Russians, and in the middle of the country, I think United States will take over. I think this is one of the big deals that happened, and we didn't know about it, but we're seeing it on the ground, because Al-Sharia, as Sharmin said, it's literally a shit show, and they dismissed every high-ranking official that was in the Assad government. And we know all these people. These people came from across Syria and across the world just to fight Al-Assad and Hezbollah. And now nobody thought that what will happen the next day, because everybody didn't care. They only cared to protect Israel and to defeat Hezbollah and to replace Assad. And this happened now. And now they are realizing they can't establish a real state. And we saw that not only after these security incidents, before saw it before when they tried to do the elections, they failed in the Kurdish area, and then apparently what happened is that Sharia himself appointed half of the parliament, which is a joke. So that's what's happening. And of course, also the attacks happened. I think what happened is very natural. If you got like hundreds of thousands of people in the name of God and told them that you are the real Muslims and you have to fight the Shias, and after that you will fight Israel, and Bashar Assad kills Sunnis. There's people that I think they really believe that they want to fight the Americans and the Israelis, but unfortunately they saw themselves fighting only Assad and fighting the Israeli army and fighting
even the ideologues really want to fight the Israelis and Americans, because they would have had the opportunity during the war at some point. Forget that one, but they may want to fight some elements in the Persian Gulf. They may want to fight the Shia. They may want to fight even the Russians. They may want to fight Syrian minorities. The thing is that...
But let me continue, because Sharmin, what happened in Syria is individual incident. It's not a group. You know what I mean? And what happened in Daraa previously, the guy who fired on Israelis and Israel went crazy, he was an individual. And of course, the Israelis unfortunately retaliated and they killed 12 innocent people. And what happened in north of Syria, the incidents that killed also Americans, it was an individual guy. So I think this is important, because thousands came. At least if 1% of them, they have this ideology or this thinking, they will create a problem.
So the guy, the founder of Nusra, says that it was supposed to be a bigger operation and there was more than one involved. So just FYI, not guaranteed that he's speaking the truth, but he seems to go to the heart of the matter. And we've been saying this for quite a while here at the Cradle. It's that, the people, the militants, the extremists fighting in the Syrian theater were either doing it for ideology or for power and money. That's just how it worked. Otherwise, they wouldn't be taking money from the people. If they were ideological, they would be against the, Sunni regimes as well, which has always been one of the things that, Osama bin Laden was very against the Gulf monarchies and all the monarchies, right? So the ideologues in this batch would be hating on Shara, because Shara came in, right? And he put on a tie and he went and, bent the knee to the Arab monarchies, begging with a begging cup. He went and bent the knee at the White House, right? He's absorbed every attack Israel has launched on Syria. For the ideologues, Shara is a huge sellout. For the ones with power and money who would be, highly dissatisfied right now, they are probably not part of the ones that have been appointed by Shara into various roles. They probably think they could do a better job, or they should have been higher up on the list, etc. So I think you have, potentially tens of thousands of these people who are battle tested and have been, cut out of the prize, right? Who've been sidelined, who will continue to attack. And there's no difference between the FSA and Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Like I said, it's fluid. Okay, so these paymasters ran out of, let's say, British financial backing. So they moved to, Kuwaiti financial backing or Qatari financial backing. They move very fluidly within these groups, depending on who pays the higher salaries and who has the better weapons caches. And so, you have that lot. So within the core of the militancy, that finally won Damascus, you have potentially tens of thousands who are very dissatisfied. And then, of course, you have the minorities, right? The Druze minorities, the Kurdish minorities, the Alawi minorities. And then, you have also, let's say, many Sunni who, right, were Ba'ath Party members who are out of that now, have to stay quiet, don't anymore get a piece of the pie. Syrians, by and large, will be highly dissatisfied. And let me tell you, remove the Caesar Act, the money will come rolling in, and it will be exactly like in Lebanon. Okay. Basically, a few dozen people will get to keep all the prizes. All right. And like how billions disappeared in Ukraine, billions disappeared in Iraq, billions disappeared in Afghanistan, billions are going to disappear in Syria. Right. They're basically going to feed the corruption. I believe the Syrian situation is going to worsen. And the fact that they killed Americans, I mean, really, like, they kill Syrians every day and they kill a few Americans, and people go, oh, who cares? They take a risk. Why they put the National Guard out there? That's a good question. Just cannon fodder, young boys, who just, they don't care. Right.
And
probably didn't have important parents.
I mean, it flies in the face of the narrative completely of the last year. Very quickly, let me thank Mainstream 2168 for their super chat. Make sure to hit that like button, everybody who's here with us. It reminds me of that a feature we had a few months ago. I think it was at the start of the year when the Alawite massacres were happening, in which someone close to Shara's circle gave us a quote, right? Gave the Cradle a quote in which Shara said that he was aware of the massacres and that the bloodletting was going to continue to happen for some time, right?
Because people need their revenge.
Now the question is this the beginning of a new bloodletting? Because, I'm glad you both of you guys brought it up. The fact that there's obviously going to be some discontent within the rank and file, right? Or even higher up, of like, what exactly are we doing now? Okay, like the IMF is coming to Syria and the World Bank is coming to Syria. Then you have all of the media outlets who went on these blitz to call them the diversity-friendly jihadis who are just so nice, ISIS, but without the head chopping, essentially, is what they were saying. And now we're seeing the truth. I mean, it's not like we ever stopped seeing the truth, but it's kind of like now you have 3 U.S. service members dead, and you still have U.S. troops in Syria.
Yeah, and these aren't like what are they called? Like necessarily lone actors. They may be, but I suspect more coordination will start to take place, because right after that, this is yesterday, 4 members of Syria's internal security forces were killed, and a 5th was wounded after gunmen opened fire on them in the southern Idlib countryside, which you mentioned. And then today, 2 members of Syria's Ministry of Defense were seriously injured after being shot at by unknown gunmen riding a motorcycle near, sort of in the western Aleppo countryside. That's 3 times in 1 week already. What's happening. Again, our show today is called Backlash, and that's what it is. Like, it's the proverbial dike. You can put a few fingers in, right? The water finds another way out, and eventually you just don't have enough fingers to plug the dike, and the whole thing floods and comes crashing down. And I think that's kind of what empire has done. They've got so many fingers and so many dikes with no actual plans, no actual strategy, right? Just a lot of words, a lot of promises, and a lot of fake constructs, that this is all going to come crashing down. And when it does, of course, American soldiers are going to be killed. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to run for the hills, like they did when the Marine bombing happened in Lebanon in 1983, was it? They ran, they fled, but, bombed the hell out of Lebanon like cowards as they left. And so I think we're going to see more of that. Every U.S. embassy in this region is built like a fortress with like barbed wire and like, right, unusual steel contraptions to protect people in. U.S. embassy staff, they don't go into the city. They don't, you won't see them in cafes and restaurants. So I think it's just squeezing tighter on the Americans, no matter how much they cozy up to the Damascus
but
government.
also, يعني as they say, time has changed. يعني in 1983, when Lebanon, sorry, the United States retaliated, Syria downed Israeli jets, for instance. And we had a powerful Arab state to defend some of surrounding countries, including Lebanon, to prevent the expansion of the West. And that's what happened. But now we have Sharia after 1 year. Now he's like sending his forces to patrol in many areas inside Syria, and they are making joint drills. No, I think it's far. Yeah, it's not like before.
Thank you
Well,
so much to Jolly Lollipop for the super chat. What were you going to say, Karim?
Yeah,
Charmaine. I'm sorry,
Charmaine,
Charmaine. I cut you off.
yeah, I shaved my beard today, Esteban. You should know the difference. You know, there is no wall that is impermeable when you have that many enemies. And I think the time for the old colonial imperial powers is over. We're seeing it in the Sahel. We're going to see it in Syria. Of course, Americans will leave when their lives are at risk. Okay. I mean, Trump has never wanted to be there and doesn't need to be there, actually. Right. If they remove US troops from Syria, what happens is fights are going to break out where the US troops, it's not that they held the peace, so everyone was so afraid to hit them. So, for instance, the resistance axis in this region never hits US troops. They just don't. They don't hit US military or diplomatic personnel. But the ones who don't have any brakes on them are the sort of Salafi jihadi extremists. And they will hit them. They will hit Americans. Them in Syria, right? The opposition that grew to the American presence, sorry, not Syria, in Iraq, would target Americans. And so that might happen again. Again, part of a backlash that, once it starts, will continue. When you see that Americans bleed and then nobody can do anything about it, those numbers will rise. And Shara simply does not have control over Syria. He does Damascus,
I think that's apparent. We still have some echo, FYI. But I was going to say, the last time U.S. soldiers were killed in Syria, there was like U.S. combat or what do you call them? Fatalities of U.S. soldiers in Syria was 2019. It's been 6 years since the last time U.S. soldiers were killed. This was in a suicide bomb attack in Manbij in Syria.
Was it a U.S. soldier, or did they characterize them as a contractor in the end? Because they always characterize
from what I'm seeing right now, they were members of the U.S. military. In the intervening years, in between this attack and the one on Friday, there's been at least a couple of attempts at the U.S. Congress to pull out troops from Syria to end the combat mission, and yet Congress voted against it. They voted to keep the troops in Syria. So yes, this is all
because that's
fine
handy
and dandy.
For Israel.
Exactly.
Israel doesn't want the U.S. out of there. They want to drag America into the quagmires,
For the U.S. electorate, as long as it's just like the Arabs getting killed or the Africans getting killed, as long as the coffins are not coming back home. But all of a sudden, you're getting coffins again. And at a time in which, Donald Trump wants intervention in Venezuela. He wants to go into Venezuela with U.S. troops. He wants to stay in Syria. You have U.S. troops present in Israel, controlling the aid mechanism in Gaza. So, at what point does it have to end, right? And how many more U.S. service members are going to get killed? Not that their lives matter anymore, but obviously to the electorate, it should.
This is where we go back to the fight brewing between MAGA and MIGA, the America Firsters and the Israel Firsters, because the Israel Firsters want extremists and jihadists and terror attacks. They want that. It justifies everything they do in their minds. Okay. They also want U.S. troops there. They don't want to fight these wars themselves. They need the U.S. presence there. They need the U.S. to be so pissed off that they'll continue to send weapons to Israel. This is the long game. I think, Karim, if we could post in the podcast in the sort of description. And this is such a great read for anyone watching this. Just, seriously read this. In 2003, so 2 years after the September 11th attacks, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing. Okay, their subcommittee on terrorism, technology, and homeland security held a hearing on Wahhabism. Okay, the title of the hearing was Terrorism, Growing Wahhabi Influence in the United States. And while, so in the United States, for instance, I can't remember the number exactly, but in this document, people are testifying that something like 90% or more of imams, clerics, Muslim clerics in the US prison system, which at that point contained something like 12,000 Muslims, all right? The vast majority of Muslim clerics in the US prison system administering to Muslim prisoners were Wahhabis. Okay, Wahhabism being one of the most extreme elements of Islam, a sect that is the only two countries in the world that ruled by that sect are Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Qatar has taken a much more moderate approach to their version of Wahhabism, but the Saudis know. And in this report, and this is back in 2003. They testified that the Saudis had spent upwards of $70 billion, basically since the Iranian Revolution, all right, on funding Wahhabi madrasas, seeding them everywhere in the Muslim world, from Pakistan especially and heavily, right? And, throughout Muslim countries. And this is today that number's for sure at least doubled. Now, the current Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, is trying to change that. He's slapping around Wahhabi sheikhs, and you can see concerts. I saw Cardi B with her, just grinding her big ass on a concert stage in Riyadh. Okay, I couldn't believe that, and just this week, and so I think. The problem was the amount of money went to anyone who would take the most extremist Muslim sect and disseminate it worldwide, create kind of armies of followers, right, who could then be weaponized or
human drones.
Yeah, exactly. You have to read this piece. It's just like the tip of the iceberg when I'm telling you. They literally link everything from 9/11 onwards to the Saudis specifically and say that the Saudis fund Al-Qaeda. And then after this 2003 hearing, you have never seen anything like this touch the Senate or the US House of Representatives again. This subject went dead. All right. And it was geopolitical. They don't care. They want to make money. They don't care. They don't want to blast Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia gives them a lot of money. You have to read this because then you understand what the backlash is. The U.S. Continued to befriend and encourage and even plot and cooperate with the Saudis in growing these Salafi armies that would, attack U.S. adversaries from Iran to Russia to China, anywhere really.
I think, yeah, sure. I want us to move on because I feel like this is a perfect segue. Everything you just brought up.
But please read this, guys. Please read this, and Kenny, please pin it in our description.
Make sure to read it, Will. You'll find it in the description. But this brings us to the Bondi Beach attack in Sydney, Australia, in which, according to Australian authorities, so far, this is the information that has been made available, a father and son, allegedly Pakistani Australians, opened fire on a congregation of Jewish citizens, of Jewish Australians, who were celebrating the first day of Hanukkah in Bondi Beach, killing about 16 of them. And I feel, Charmaine, that this attack really kind of encapsulates everything you just went over in one way or another. And it also aligns with what we just saw happen in Syria and the danger of both Wahhabism and Salafist ideology, because the shooter who the dad who was killed at the scene, and the son, who is apparently 24 years old, his name is Nabir Akram, survives. He's in critical condition, I believe. There's images of them. I don't know if we have this, Karim. Hopefully we do. The image of him at a Salafi school with a Salafi teacher. There's even reports, and this hasn't been confirmed yet, that there was an ISIS flag in their car. As you said a few moments ago, Sharmeen, as well, the usual, you found a passport, you found a Quran or something in the car.
And an ISIS flag.
In this case, reportedly an ISIS flag. This is, obviously a terror attack. Obviously, we completely condemn it. No attack on civilians is ever justified, just like we've seen in Gaza for the past 2 years. Simply not justified. It needs to be condemned as such. But nevertheless, it was very quickly, almost immediately, spinned by Israeli Prime Minister. An alleged Iranian plot into an alleged Iranian plot, Iranian-led. It was the Iranians. It's anti-Semitism. It might or might not be. That last one may or may not be. We'll see what the investigation says. In any case, saying like a recognition of Palestine is what led to these attacks. That was Netanyahu said. He was like, you see, Australia, you recognize Palestine. Now you have a shooting of Jews in Bondi Beach. So, again, the Salafi Syria killing U.S. soldiers, and now we see reportedly so far another Salafi element opening fire against Jewish worshippers on the first day of Hanukkah. I just wanted to say that. What were you saying, Karim?
Well, I just want to say that they also accused Assad globalized Antifada.
Karim,
I don't know. I'm hearing your voice
you very well. Yeah, it's breaking up, and I don't know if
now it's. I think it's better. They also blame the people that chanted and said that the Intifada should be globalized.
That was the New York Times, a New York Times headline that said is the Bondi Beach attack is what it means to globalize the Intifada.
Yeah.
So, I think Netanyahu should shut up, because the moment he opens his mouth and talks about any killing that happens in any place outside of Israel, the entire world gets suspicious of that incident, because it's exactly what happened with the Charlie Kirk assassination. Netanyahu came out and said, "Oh my gosh, R.I.P. Charlie, and we know how much you unconditionally supported Israel."
He said it wasn't us. He came out to say it wasn't us who killed Charlie Kirk.
Well, he did that later, right? Because immediately when Netanyahu speaks, everyone knows. His lips move. He lies. Oh my gosh. Okay, we need to be looking elsewhere. So Netanyahu immediately comes out and tries to politicize the incident and tries to spin his narrative about Jews must move back to Israel. It's the safest place for Jews in the world. Definitely not. And, it's these, I think Zionists have been responsible for more terror attacks against Jews than any other organization in world history ever, perhaps collectively, more than any other organization.
Just October 7 alone and the Hannibal Directive.
Yeah. So exactly, just those. But Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese dismissed Netanyahu's claim that Australia's recognition of Palestinian statehood pours fuel on an anti-Semitic fire. He did an interview with ABC. I think that's the Australian broadcaster, not the American one. Mm-hmm. And Albanese said there's no link between the recognition of Palestine and the Bondi Beach attack, and stressed that most of the world supports a two-state solution. So he put that, he nipped that Netanyahu narrative in the bud. However, social media went insane. They immediately assumed that it is a false flag attack. Now, this is so interesting because, before there would be a beat or two, right, a few days, a few weeks, even a few months before people started suspecting, Israeli or US or false flags, right? Another party's involvement in a horrific incident. The same within the hours of this news coming up, people were immediately saying false flags. And these were not, by the way, necessarily Palestine supporters or Arabs or Muslims. These were Americans and Australians and Westerners. And, and then once social media decides to scrutinize something, oh my gosh, well, of course, a lot of fake news comes out, but I don't want to say it's super deliberate. I think people just put out anything they're hearing without verifying it because they don't know how to verify it. But there's a lot of theories going on. And then inevitably, people latch on to something that is irrefutable. And they go, this is so odd and so out of place. Now I absolutely dismiss anything that anyone says. Now, why do people think that Israel did it? Because I think after Gaza, Westerners have learned about false flags. Okay. They don't believe anything Israel says. They don't believe they were victims in October 7th. They believe that Israel killed most of the Jews, the Jewish Israelis, during that day and the days that followed, and killed most of the hostages and basically shot at whatever moved, right, from their Apache helicopters and from
the
tank shells.
Border into an extermination zone. That was the order.
Yeah, and even some of the settlements, right?
Yes, exactly.
In which
I'm not talking just the wall. I'm talking like the whole area.
Correct. Yeah. And once they learned about that and the lies and the beheaded baby lie and the rape lie and stuff, they went ballistic. And then, of course, Epstein and the connections between Epstein and the Mossad and the connections between the Maxwells and the Mossad. And it's just, snowballed. And nobody believes Israel anymore on anything. So Netanyahu should probably keep his mouth shut. But, people were all over social media bringing up things from the Lavon affair, okay, to explain to other people on social media why the Israelis are likely behind this as a false flag. So the Lavon affair in the 1950s was a failed Israeli covert false flag operation to plant bombs inside Egyptian, American, and British-owned civilian targets like cinemas, libraries, cafes, educational centers. The bombs were timed to detonate several after closing time, and they were meant to be blamed on the Muslim Brotherhood and Egyptian communists or nationalists, etc., to basically create an environment to induce the British government to retain its occupying troops in the Suez Canal. We were just talking about this. The Israelis want American troops to remain, okay? So killing some of them may do that in Syria, right? So in this case, in Iraq, actually a professor I know quite well, a wonderful guy, Avi Schleim, has revealed that in the 1950s, hundreds of thousands of Jews that lived in Iraq basically migrated en masse because of Mossad-linked bombings targeting Jewish neighborhoods that were blamed on Arabs to create fear and push migration to Israel. And this is well documented. I saw another thing, which was kind of amazing, because none of us have heard about this. In Mexico, in 2001, right after the 9/11 attacks, and Grok confirmed it because nobody believed the poster of this information. There were 2 Israeli nationals who were arrested inside Mexico's legislative palace, so Mexico's Congress, Parliament, carrying pistols, grenades, dynamite, and fake Pakistani passports. Okay, these people were eventually, taken out of Mexico quietly by the Israelis. Mainstream media didn't cover it. This happened. They were looking. This was a false flag attack that failed. But, then we go to 9/11 and people now making that connection more and more. Then we go to, the Charlie Kirk assassination. This is the most amazing thing about Bondi Beach is within minutes, people started saying this was probably an Israeli false flag attack to justify their genocidal policies and to shut down governments, to equate basically the killing of Jews to Israel.
Yes.
I have argued for a long time that the biggest victims, other than Palestinians, of Israel are Jews globally. They have been so propagandized, so, frightened off, okay, and terrorized about people want to kill you. People, Hitlers are rising all over the world. They're going to be pogromed. It's just made them into an embattled minority that sees danger everywhere and will be the first to amplify any threat, even when they're not real. So I don't blame the people, on the first day of Hanukkah worshiping at all. There were some bad seeds in there, like some proper Zionists. But that's not what you do when you're fighting a war against a, illegitimate ideology like Zionism. You go after Israeli soldiers and, people perpetrating the genocide.
Or you do what, for example, the Hind Rajah Foundation does. You use legal ways. You do not defeat terrorism with terrorism, because what the Israeli army is perpetrating in Gaza and Lebanon and elsewhere is terrorism.
Israel wants acts of terror against Jews. We've just outlined that they've targeted Americans, they've targeted the British, they've targeted Jews across Iraq, across Syria in the old days to try to get more Jewish immigration to occupied Palestine. This is their MO. And you know what? Actually, we should go to that fellow. Can we show that guy? So this guy has become the fact, or one of the facts that everyone is rallying around on social media. What's his name?
The bloodied guy?
Arsen Ostrovsky, who apparently has just been in Australia only 2 weeks. He's the executive director of the Israeli Jewish Congress, and he's head of the Australia, Israeli and Jewish Affairs Council's AJAX Sydney office, and he's a fellow at Israel's Misgav Institute for National Security and Zionist Strategy. Shows up in Australia on site at this place 2 weeks before it happens.
And
okay,
he claims to have survived October 7 and the Yemeni attacks on Tel Aviv as well.
Yeah, let's put that picture up that we did in our post, Karim, first of all, of this man's own posts where he's been in like every tragedy. Everywhere.
It's the Forrest Gump of the Jewish Zionist.
Seriously, this guy, do you have that? Am I? Okay. So if you can see, where, that page where we have the multiple posts, he was, selfies of him when he's like hiding out from the Houthi Ansar Allah's attacks on, I guess, Tel Aviv or whatever, pictures of him. I don't know, hiding out from, he's in every attack anywhere. And he was in the Bondi Beach shooting attack, which is insane. Then he comes out in the Bondi Beach shooting attack. And of course, who does this? You've got blood pouring down you. All right. Do we have a picture of what he looks like?
I don't know if do you think we should put that on YouTube? I feel like YouTube sometimes is very touchy-feely about that.
Okay,
because he's very bloody.
Why don't you put a picture of him with the bandage on? Oh, it is? I can't see it.
It is here. I can see it. It's
okay.
The three of them.
So basically, there's a picture of him like lying on the ground with the camera, with his entire head bloodied. Okay, who does that? And then here's a picture of him bandaged up, presumably by paramedics. Okay, because it looks like not the kind of bandage you would just have on you, all right, or in your car. But the thing is, and I know this from 101% from the Beirut port explosion, is there were people all over Lebanon that day, Beirut and its outskirts, in hospitals with blood all over them. And no doctor would treat any patient until they had cleared the bloodiness so that they could identify the wound hole. Okay? But nobody's wiped his face to see where the blood's coming from. I was bloodied and I thought because of the amount of blood in one place that it was from that area, but it wasn't. It was from another area. You have to clean the patient in order to figure out where the wound hole is so you could bandage it up. All right.
But you also need to get that selfie out, Charmaine. So, is that a eternal question?
Well, no, I know, but that's just not how people behave. It's like why people are going off on Erica Kirk. They don't think that's the way a widow grieves, or
grieving on
and
her
and I agree. I agree. People grieve in all kinds of different ways and all kinds of different stages. So I'm not going after her there, but I'm literally saying
but not
that
in that way.
It doesn't resonate. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't make sense. And then when regular people are asking the question and the media and political class steer clear of those questions and answers, and not only that, go so far as to basically denigrate the views of the majority, or the rising views of the majority, by calling them conspiracy theories, people get super upset and they double down.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think Bondi Beach, when I first logged on to see what is this shooting everyone's talking about, and I immediately saw people saying this was a Israeli false flag attack, I thought, that's a little bit too soon to be jumping to conclusion. But of course, everyone knows about Israel's false flag attacks. It's attacks against Jews. They don't care.
They know about
It's
Hasbara.
The end justifies the means, right? Netanyahu speaking out so close, politicizing what happened, a genuine human tragedy, politicizing it instantly. The guy can't read a room anymore. Israelis
no disrespect to the victims, but their bodies weren't even cold before Netanyahu came out and gave orders and was starting to blame Iran. And that has been the narrative. Karim, we haven't heard from you in a bit. I want to hear your thoughts about the framing of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was reading the attacks. They are hilarious. Yeah, our viewers are very funny.
We have a very, very funny group of commenters. I love them. Make sure to hit that like button, guys, because we're still a bit low. Go ahead, Karim.
Oh, let me do that too.
Yeah, what was your question?
Give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts about the media narrative. Give me your thoughts about where we go from now. What do you expect?
Yeah, regarding I just want to add something about what Charmaine said. Also, I want to say that in regarding what she said about Iraq in the 50s, between 50 and 51, the Jews made or the Mossad made many bombings, including not only on civilians. And if a barber is a Jew, they will bomb the barber, and they use this to spread also propaganda to Yemen and to Morocco. And from Yemen alone, they and the Brits, they airlifted around 50,000 people from Yemen, and they put them in north of the occupied land near the border of Lebanon. So they want to protect their northern border by the Yemenis population, and that's also what happened after the October 7, when there was battles between Hezbollah and Israel. That's why the Israelis in the center, in Tel Aviv and in Haifa and other places, they didn't care about the north, because they are originally from Yemen. I just wanted to also add this information. Regarding what happened in the beach, also I am against of saying that whatever happens, Israel is behind it. We know that there's many people that suffered, and we know that many people are angry of what Israel did. I think there is around 2 billion Muslims. Maybe one of them is angry enough to commit this shooting. Not everything should be like circling about Israel and the Mossad and what they are doing across the world. Of course, they did many things, but also because we are also providing the narrative that nobody can kill an Israeli or make an operation against an Israeli. Because nobody wants to do that. There's people that are really angry, and of course many Jews, especially Jews that are in New York, we saw them talking a lot after or during or before also Mamdani's election. They said that we don't feel safe, not because we are Jews, we don't feel safe because what Netanyahu is committing, and everybody now is hating us because of the actions of the state of Israel. And the Israelis, they are saying that we are the only safe place for Jews, and every Jew should go there, and they are killing in the name of the Jews. They killed all these Palestinians and Lebanese and even Iranians under the guise of they are protecting the Jews around the world. So what happened, I think, is a natural reaction of the genocide and of the policy of the Israeli state headed by Netanyahu.
Hey, Tilly Dreams in the comments is reminding us we pronounce it Bondi, okay, not Bondi Beach.
Pardon us.
Bondi.
Excuse us. Excuse
Bondi.
us. We are not
Oh, Penhog too. Okay, there are two Aussies here. Let's get it right. Bondi Beach.
Sorry, I only know Raushi, so.
Good one. So yeah, of course, as I said, the investigation is still ongoing. I'm sure, but the damage has kind of been done in a way, like by both what you were saying, Karim. The immediate reaction to this was a false flag, which may or may not have been, and of course, from the other side to being this was Iran. And remember that in Australia, in particular, the entire since 2024, the Mossad has been constantly talking about the Iranian threat and the Iranian threat. Then, I will just simply point, they will, point to like a swastika being spray painted on a synagogue, or they dismantle an Iranian terror cell. Now, officially, Iran has always been, denying all of these charges as complete falsehoods. And also, I just want to point to a tweet, which may or may not have any relevance down in the end. But, Candace Owens, a few weeks ago, was tweeting that they are talking about a 9/11 style attack for the second week of December. So, I don't know. I'm simply pointing it out.
Anytime this flag or a passport on the scene, question everything. That's all I have to say. I mean, it's so like a toddler might buy it. A toddler might buy it. Okay. I want to say something. Go ahead.
I just want to comment something very fast regarding what happened. If it was a Mossad operation, it failed because what happened is that a Muslim guy stopped everything, so they can't do it.
Yes, very good. Yes,
a Syrian Muslim hero.
There was a hero at the scene. His name was Ahmed Al-Ahmed. Yes,
and I mean, talk about like Netanyahu and zero facts. I mean, he immediately came out and talked about the Jewish hero. Like literally, he writes these scripts but doesn't read the room anymore. They should shut him up. At any rate, again, back to the Iran thing, I think there was pointing fingers at Hezbollah too. They're saying Hezbollah is so weak, it can't even do anything in Lebanon. So it goes to Bondi Beach in Sydney and does it. So, it really should make everyone question every charge against Iran and Hezbollah in all theaters, from Bulgaria to Argentina, because, there's nothing provable. It isn't the MO of these countries and organizations in the Axis to launch terror attacks. And when I say terror attacks, let's not use the American, definition for their enemies, but actually what the loose international definition is to use political violence against non-combatants, meaning civilian populations. That is the broadest, definition of terrorism, and that's not what Iran does. It's not what Hezbollah does. It's been pinned on them, but you can see that's not what they do. They reserve their fire for the enemy.
And now you have, these the immediate framing, as you said, of Netanyahu.
Wait, can I just say one thing because it'll finish off my thought?
Go ahead.
Just back into the thing we're going to link, the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing.
The video also.
They talk about how they basically talk about how all of this stuff is Saudi linked, and all of, that 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi and Wahhabis, and Wahhabism is linked to all this terror activity going on around the world. And guess what? An American court, what is it called? Found Iran guilty of something related to 9/11 and rewarded victims' families, I think, billions of dollars in frozen Iranian assets. I mean, they're basically telling you 2 years after 9/11, right? The Senate Judiciary Committee's hearing subcommittee on terrorism is telling you about the Saudi links to everything. and then a U.S. court blames Iran and steals Iranian money and gives it to victims' family. It's not even, there's no truth and justice anymore in the American system. So it really, really important. Please, Esteban, go ahead. I just want to.
I just wanted to point out that at the same time that nobody's buying anymore this narrative, of that Hezbollah and Iran are behind this, because the evidence points to the complete contrary. You have the Nobel Peace Prize winner claiming that Venezuela needs to be intervened by these, sabers of democracy and the free world, because Hezbollah and Iran are in Venezuela. I mean, they have the same script. Netanyahu has the same script. Machado has the same script. I mean, let's update the screenwriting, guys, because it's getting old and nobody's buying it anymore.
Well, speaking of screenwriting, a Mossad operative was interviewed by CBS News, I think, 60 Minutes show after, I guess, last December, after the pager attacks, the terror attack that Israel launched indiscriminately,
and which was celebrated,
Lebanese,
by Western media.
Celebrated. An absolute, the worst terror attack we've seen, period. Targeting 5,000, and the next day 4,000 lives, way higher than, more than the people who died in 9/11. And what I want to say is, what was I going to say? Oh, so the Mossad agent is talking about how they got pagers into, how they set up this operation, but then goes on to boast in the most incredible way. Take a listen.
Convince Hezbollah to buy this?
Well, obviously, they didn't know that they were buying it from Israel.
Who did they buy it from, or think they were buying it from?
We have an incredible array of possibilities of creating foreign companies that have no way being traced back to Israel, shell companies over shell companies who affect the supply chain to our favor. We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors. We're the producers. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
In their own words, out of the mouth of babes. What can I say?
Or you have 60 Minutes, that famous anti-Semite outlet.
Yeah.
In any case, yes, I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to discuss. I think we have covered some of the main events. I don't really have anything on my side here.
No, but I mean, let's hear from you about what this looks like. I mean, for sure, there's very few facts we know, right? We know the names that the authorities, I believe, have identified, right, of the perpetrators and their ages. We know that they were licensed to have firearms.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the alleged younger shooter, the son, had been looked at by Australian intelligence or security agents here and there over the last few years.
He was investigated in 2019 for alleged Islamic State ties.
Yeah. And I mean, I have no idea if this is true, but I increasingly, because there always seems to be like eyes on the people who do an act like this. And then, we also know that a lot of these people are groomed and coached. I have no idea, but I'm saying that's really all we know. And then it starts to get weird when you have the Prime Minister of Israel, who does not speak for world Jewry, come out, start throwing Iran and Hezbollah in there and say, yeah, this shows that, anti-Semitism is on the rise because people, the Palestine debate should be shut down, etc. He goes full on, like zero consideration for the victims. And then you have, Mr. Bloodyhead, right, who's just everywhere, the most unlucky guy in the world, or, every time there's a terror attack anywhere, conveniently lands there. He works at an Zionist strategy, Global Zionist Strategy Institute, is on the scene doing selfies, and then obviously a fake bandage, because sorry guys, that is not how even a paramedic would do a band-aid. They would clean off your face to make sure they were getting the wounds. Don't forget, sometimes you have to find the wound. You know, when you have adrenaline after an attack, which I discovered in the Beirut port blast, among other places, I had a shard of glass in my foot, which didn't even hurt me. I felt nothing with the cuts I had, nothing. And many people didn't, okay? They felt nothing for hours because of adrenaline. And then that dissipates and suddenly you're in excruciating pain. So they have to get rid of the blood to see where you might not be identifying, but where you might have, you know, shards of something in you, or something potentially even worse. So that's fake. That is fake. Or a paramedic, a medical professional did not do that bandage.
Maybe that's the one. I mean, the only thing I'm seeing, and you know, we already went over the facts. There's really not that much information anyway left. You know, for example, like the stuff about the searches in Tel Aviv. I don't buy it this time because of the time difference between Australia and Tel Aviv, because people were using that
By the way,
online as well.
I saw something, and it's on a Google official page that says the time that the person is searching it appears in the time zone of that person.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. So just to clarify that, because there's a lot of back and forth on that issue. I don't care about that stuff. I think that stuff is just like rule of thumb, you know, something you can mention, but I mean, it's not very exact unless you're in a close time zone potentially. It's just the way this thing unfolded and the people who came in to set the narratives. Don't forget that when any incident happens, all right, sometimes the reactions from people are way too quick. The narratives come hard and fast way too quick. You can't know this. You can't know these things already. No official can know these things already. They're still investigating the crime scene. But to have the narratives emerge within an hour or so of a major incident like this makes it extremely suspicious. They don't even give time for a breath to be taken place, let alone an investigation. And that is a sort of hallmark, right, of operations and psychological operations, is the amount of knowledge people had. I mean, 9/11, immediately we were told Al-Qaeda. Immediately. Sorry, you couldn't have known that. If you knew that, then you knew they were planning it, that you knew something was happening and you didn't do anything about it, you know? So I always, you know, my sort of journalistic radar goes up when there's too neat an explanation very soon after a major tragic incident.
Very good point, Gabe. Very good point, Charmaine. I think we can wrap it up for this week with those thoughts. I want to thank everyone who joined us this week. Make sure to hit that like button, guys, before you go. Make sure to leave a comment underneath this video. Make sure to go to thecradle.co, where you can find this very, very cool merchandise that we have put up for sale. Some of it, it's a limited drop. It's just until January 1st, 2026. So go ahead and do that. Check out our Patreon as well, where you can become a direct supporter of the Cradle. We need your support now more than ever. The censorship is not going to get any easier. It's only going to get worse. So please continue to support our work. We want to thank you again. Thank you, Karim. Thank you, Charmaine, as well. And we will see you on Thursday.
You didn't say bye-bye.
We can still hear you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.